Liz Criley is a member of our CEB Board of Trustees. She also led our speaker selection committee as part of our conference committee this year, and she is thrilled to be introducing our guest speaker today.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. So thank you, Leah, for the introduction. A few of us on the conference committee set out about 6 months ago to find our keynote speaker, and there were a ton of great options out there. But we kept, as we were brainstorming and talking about different candidates, we kept coming back to a couple of different themes and words. Things like creativity or creative problem solving, simplicity. There were a number of things that we wanted someone who understood the world of benefits, but also was coming with a fresh take or kind of an outside view, right? Not kind of in the weeds and what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So we met with some folks and thought that there were some really great candidates. And then we met Caroline. And I think I speak for the entire group when I say that we just fell in love with her. From the moment we got on the phone with her, it was a 45-minute conversation. It felt like we had known her for years. We could have stayed on the phone with her for hours and hours and hours. So I am very, very excited to introduce her this morning. I am going to read a little bit about her just so that I don't mess it up. So our speaker this morning is an author, a veterinarian entrepreneur who helps unapologetic left-brainers, yours truly, to amplify originality with a creative mindset, to uncover novel solutions to chronic problems, refresh their well-being, and find new energy for their work. Although she cannot draw a stick figure or sing happy birthday, she expresses her creativity through comedy, writing, creative problem solving, and things like sneaking vegetables into smoothies, which I could use some tips on for my children. An award-winning innovator, Caroline has been published in medical and veterinary journals and is the author of the book, The Reluctant Creative. She is based in Calgary, Alberta. Please help me welcome to the stage the Reluctant Creative, Dr. Caroline Brookfield.
Thank you. So I do something kind of neat. I don't know. I imagine people when they were kids when I'm out and about. It's really fun. You should try it. So I'll be at the grocery store and I'll see someone and I'll imagine that young kid full of wonder with his shoelaces untied instead of the 85-year-old man buying carrots and a Hershey's bar. Or I'll see the young girl doing an amazing sandcastle display at sunset instead of the harried mom with toddler in tow just trying to buy cooked chicken in a bag for dinner. Because as kids, we keep our creativity. It stays with us, but it changes. Society changes it, our job changes it, expectations change it, but it's still there. We have that inner creativity that we've always had as kids deep down inside. You remember when you were a kid? I remember a time my teacher announced talent show in 2 weeks. I sat up so quickly, I bumped my knee on that bolt under the table that, it would get you right in the kneecap. What? The whole school was going to be involved. The teachers, the principal, all of the classmates. I could share a talent that I had with the entire school? Amazing. What was my talent? I don't know. I could tell a speech, or I could play the piano, or maybe I could sing a song. Yeah, clearly not that one. Think. I was in grade 2. I wanted to stand out. I wanted to be different. I wanted to be noticed. What could I do that was going to blow their socks off? I wanted to see their jaws drop. I had it. I was going to perform ventriloquism. Be different, right? I'd never done it before, but that wasn't going to stop me. I ran home. I found Samantha at the back of my closet. She was my Cabbage Patch doll. I grabbed her by the hand, and I took her in front of that bathroom mirror for hours. We perfected a performance we could be proud of. The day of the talent show came, and I just sat on that cold gym room floor, my bum going numb, that crisscross applesauce, just waiting for my turn. I wasn't paying attention to anybody else's talent show. Then they called my name, and I popped up, and I ran to the stage, and I brought Samantha with me, and we started our performance. And then a funny thing happened. The audience just kind of fell away. It was just me and Samantha. We were in our flow. We were creating. We were performing and sharing our unique creativity with the school. We finished our performance, and I took a bow, and I don't know about Samantha, but I knocked it out of the park. I thought that I had nailed that performance. I felt so happy and so creative to make that connection. Because kids are universally creative, right? And actually, science has proven that. Dr. George Land is a researcher, and his team was hired by NASA because they wanted to know who's creative. So, in his landmark study, he built this creative test for NASA, and then they had a neat idea. Why don't we give this test to kindergartners? So they gave this creativity test to kindergartners. 98% of kindergartners scored as creative genius. 98%. You were all creative geniuses in kindergarten. I was a creative genius. Well, some of you, the numbers people, are like, well, 2% of us were picking our nose, eating crayons maybe. But the problem with creativity is that we think it has to be something artistic, something epic. So many people will say, I'm not creative. Well, I can't draw, I can't paint, but I'm creative at work. I can create benefits programs, or I can find new ways to stretch a budget. So I think creativity as a word is just too small. So researchers have differentiated it into different styles. So broadly, there's big C creativity or large C creativity. That's things like the Eiffel Tower or The Simpsons or Cubism, things that are celebrated by experts in a domain. But there's also small C creativity. That's everyday creativity. That's the creativity I'm talking about today. Things that you already do that you might not call creative. Maybe it's building a pivot table or an Excel table. Maybe it's figuring out how to program your coffee maker so you can shave 3 minutes off of your time in the morning to get to work. It could be sneaking vegetables into smoothies for your kids. Or it could even be something like April Fool's joke for your kids. One night I sat up, it wasn't my idea. I found it online, and I got some brown construction paper, and I cut out E's. And I put them in a box, and I gave them to my son. He's going on a field trip. Grade 2 field trip. I said, I made you some brownies. And on the lid, I wrote, no butter, no eggs, no chocolate, no flour. And he got to the front of the bus, and he opened up the package and said, my mom made brownies. And out comes some cut-out brown E's. He still says he's traumatized by that experience. So I guess I'll just pay for his therapy. Hopefully he has some benefits to cover it at some point. Because we think creativity is something that's beyond our reach because it has to be artistic, but we're using it every single day. Is there something you're using in your life that you wouldn't call creative until this moment? Even choosing your outfit or choosing your earrings or what kind of shoes you're going to wear is a creative act. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. This feels like a very self-serving slide, but I think it's important. What does a veterinarian do talking about creativity? Is that weird? It seems weird. So let me explain. When I was a little girl, I loved animals. I couldn't think of anything I would rather do than take care of them for the rest of my life. I was on the fast track to being a veterinarian. So much so that by the time I was 14 years old, I was panicking because I didn't have any experience from my vet school application. So I'm a little type A like many of you in this room. And then I got to high school and a funny thing happened. I developed a love for performance. Acting, that's me in a play where I was like a dumb princess or something. And I felt really conflicted. I felt like I was on the top of the mountain. And on one side was art, because I loved acting. On the other side was science, that I still loved. I loved problem solving, I loved animals, and I felt like I had to choose. And I didn't think I had the talent to be an actor. I had no idea how to become a cinematographer. and I still loved animals. So obviously I pursued veterinary medicine and got my degree, and I worked in small animal practice to start with, then I worked in ER, and then I also took some time off to travel. I worked in medical research. I worked for a pet food company as a technical services manager. I worked in teaching and research. Then I had 2 companies, and if it's not completely obvious, yes, I do have ADHD. But throughout that journey, I still felt like I had to separate this art and science part of me. So one of the businesses I had was a jewelry business. And I didn't want to tell any of my vet school friends about it, or vet colleagues about it, because I thought they would think it was weird. So I didn't tell anybody. And then one day that changed. I don't know why. I probably needed the sales. Anybody who's ever had a side hustle, like, it's easy to buy the stuff. It's not so easy to sell the stuff. And a funny thing happened. So I would tell them I had this jewelry business, and some of them thought it was weird. And what I do as a vet is what's called a relief vet. So I'm self-employed, and I go into different clinics. So I'd be in a clinic, and I'd tell them about my jewelry business, and I wouldn't come back for a few weeks or a month. And what I noticed time and time again is that people would come up to me and said, "You told me about your jewelry business," which I thought was kind of weird, but that reminded me of that thing I used to do. And I loved doing that thing. I don't know why I stopped. Whether it was quilting or woodworking or singing in a choir. And this has happened over and over again. And I noticed that when I went back to these clinics, it just seemed just a little bit smoother. You know, the clients were a little bit happier, the team seemed a little bit more cohesive, and everything seemed to just work a little bit better. And I wondered, is this universal, that when people are embracing their creativity, it starts to make them feel better? And so I dove into some of the research. That's me with some puppies. There's my jewelry business. And I also do stand-up comedy on the side. I'm not really that good, so don't ask me to tell a joke. But so I wondered, like, what is this thing about creativity? Like, there must be something to it. And then because of my academic background, I started reading all the research, and I was blown away about the benefits of us using our small c, little c, every creativity every single day, and the benefits to us as individuals and as well as our organizations. So the first thing it does is it makes us happier. In a ton of studies across nurses, bankers, retail workers, if you do something creative, you feel happier. And isn't that enough? Like, Leah, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, that should be kind of all, because we could all use a little bit more happiness in our day. It also builds resilience. So nurses who are doing something like making a meal, they bounce back faster from adverse events. So using our creativity makes us happy. It can be something creative, like drawing or quilting or photography, but it doesn't have to be. It could be something very simple, because creativity is just something in your brain that you then put out into the world. That's really all it is. The other thing that's really interesting is, I wondered, and researchers wondered, well, why is that the case? Why does creativity make us happier? Well, we love solving problems and closing a loop. And when we use our creativity, we're solving a problem. Whether that problem is, how should I represent that tree on this canvas? Or whether that problem is, how can I make this pivot table do something I want it to? Or how can I get Bob to clean up his dishes in the break room? Those are all solving problems, and it uses our creativity, and then we get this hit of dopamine. This is my creativity. So this is a picture of a cat in a kennel, and the idea is if you only focus on the problem, you might miss the easy solution. So the cat should jump out. It took me like 40 minutes to get this picture of this darn cat. That's creative, because he kept jumping out, and I'm like, no, you're supposed to stand there like you don't know how to jump out. And then I even added a little twist. I made him jiggle. That's creative. When you make your presentation and you make a little animation, or you add a little pop of color or a picture, it's creative. It seems silly, it seems frivolous, but it's not. And in the benefits world, creativity can be something very simple, like how you manage your day, how you manage your schedule. When I worked at Nestle Purina, they had a creative benefit that I really valued. So I worked remotely, and I would go to the head office in Mississauga in Canada once in a while, and they had a Nestle employee store. It wasn't groundbreaking. They just got some Nestle and Purina, stuff, and they put it in this little store and had someone. I loved going to that store because I could go and see all of the Nestle products. I had no idea all of the stuff they sold. And I could bring chocolate home for my kids. I could bring some coffee home. It was just such a little piece of making me feel connected to the bigger organization, as a remote worker especially. So that, to me, is an extremely creative example of a benefit that I enjoyed as an employee anyway. Is he going to jiggle again? No. So when we're talking about creativity at work, there's an ample body of evidence to show that being creative helps you be a much more emotionally intelligent leader. It increases leadership, talent engagement, retention, innovation. If people feel like they're using their creativity at work, they're half as likely to be looking for a new job. Half as likely. That's a pretty good statistic. So when you're talking about turnover and constantly trying to replace people, having them feel like they're using their creativity can be a way for them to feel more engaged and solve more problems. Gallup has also defined a creative organization with 3 criteria. 1, freedom to take risks. 2, time to be creative. And 3, expectation to be creative. If a company has all 3 of those criteria, it's considered a creative organization. And it changes from 2 out of 10 employees feeling empowered to innovate to 7 out of 10 employees feeling empowered to innovate. I don't know about you, but if you increase the number of people in your organization by 50%, and I don't know if there's statisticians in this room, but I just do the math, like 2 to 7 out of 10, that might not be statistically accurate. But if you increase by 50% the number of people who are empowered to innovate and solve problems on their own, wouldn't that make life a lot easier for your whole organization? But here's the kicker. Do you smell that? That's a smell of a cliche. That's the low-hanging fruit that is available if you're in an organization and you're a leader to help engage your employees, because only 18% of employees feel like they can take that risk to be creative. So what does that look like for you or in your organization? Are there people that you think would have good ideas, that would have ideas that they could share, or that would put their hand up to volunteer for something that don't? Because only 18% of them people feel like they have the confidence to do that, or they feel like it's a safe space, or they a structure around it, that time, expectation to be creative, and the freedom to take risks. So I would love to know, because with only 18% of people feeling like they can take the risk to be creative, if you scan that QR code on the screen there, or you go to slido.com and enter that number, it will give you a field to enter a word. So I would love to know, in one word, you can enter multiple words if you want, what holds you back from sharing ideas, using your creativity, taking a risk, doing something new in your work that you think is going to advance your organizational objectives, or just make it more fun to be at work? And we can see what comes up with that. It's working for everybody? It looks like it. Yeah. That's lots of time. Fear. It's so interesting to see how people express this, fear of failure, new leadership, staffing, competing priorities. Time is a big one. Perfectionism, rejection, failure. Oh, rejection just got a little boost there. Bottom line, capacity, motivation, focus, boss. So for this group, it looks like time is a really big barrier for creativity. Because, if you're thinking about something traditionally creative, maybe we have to go and get out all the stuff, and then we got to put it all away. But it can just be little micro doses of creativity that we're using throughout the day. We've also got rejection, failure, fear, stress. And these are common barriers to our creativity. So I want to take you back for a minute to that stage. I had just finished my performance. I was on top of the world. I thought I had blown it out of the park. And then I realized the whole school was there, principal, students, teachers, and I looked out and their jaws were dropped. And their faces were frozen in expressions of shock, horror, disgust. Oh, hurt. Right? It felt like someone had just punched me in the gut. It was the first time I realized that what people thought about my performance really mattered. And I didn't want to feel that way again. I don't know if you've had an experience like that. Maybe it was a month ago or a year ago, but I'm willing to bet that when you were a kid, you had a time when you shared something creative, something personal to build a connection with other people. Maybe you were rejected, criticized, or scorned. And if you've had that, maybe you did what I did. And I said, don't like that, I'm Gen Xer, I'm gonna push it way down. I am not creative. Nope, not me, because science is much more clear. And if I get something wrong in science, it's not personal. So that worked for a while. And, obviously my vet school journey. And then it was when I think I got to high school and started hanging out with those drama kids and performance that I really admired those kids that just did what they want. They just showed up the way they were. And I thought, are they superhuman? But no, they still got criticized and rejected and had all the things. And I realized it was practice, that they just did it over and over and over again and realized they weren't going to die and that their expression of who they were was a lot more important to them than the criticism from other people. And I don't think my experience is unique of saying I'm not creative and pushing it down and prioritizing science and data because that's really important. But what happened? What happened to our creativity? So Dr. George Land from that kindergartner study, he gave this test to a bunch of adults. And remember, 98% of kindergartners scored as genius creative. How many adults do you think scored as genius creative? Do you think it was 98%? You can clap or no? How many of you think that 75% of adults are creative? You can clap or no? Nobody? 50%? One little 50, one little tiny. I'm going to clap, but I want everyone to look at me. 30%? Couple? Yeah. 20? 10? How many think it's less than 10? How much do you think? How many people? 2%. 2% of adults scored as genius creative. I'm a really bad throw. This is a little Kit Kat bar. Heads up. That's not too bad. It was in the zone. 2% of adults scored as genius creative on that test. Maybe it was the ones who were picking their nose and eating crayons, right? 2%. And those same kindergartners, when they followed them through to 15 years old, only 10% of those 15-year-olds scored as genius creative. Like, we shouldn't feel bad about that because we have to live and survive in the world. We survived as a species because we made shortcuts and heuristics and assumptions about the way the world works. Like, green means go, what goes up must come down. If you book a flight today, it'll go on sale tomorrow. Isn't that just the way the world works, right? Because kindergartners are adorably clueless about the world. Like, ask them to look into a PBM or like how to manage a high-value drug like a GLP-1, like clueless, right? But ask them to get a unicorn to the moon, they're all in. So the trick is how to keep our knowledge and our experience that we've gained, because that's really important, because only you can do that. But then when you hit a roadblock or when you need a new approach, how do you step out of that curse of knowledge into that clueless kindergartner that can see the world in a whole different way? I'd like to introduce you to someone. This is Todd. Some of you have him on a lollipop. This is an AI representation of my inner critic. He introduced himself to me that day of the ventriloquism routine. And he is just trying to keep me safe. He's from that time we lived in caves with like dial-up internet. At a time when we lived in small groups. And if we got kicked out of that group because we were weird or did something different, we died of like starvation, predation, exposure. He's from that time. And he hasn't changed with the times. So when I get up on stage to talk to some amazing benefits professionals, or I get on stage to do stand-up, he says to me, what if they don't like it? What if they think you're stupid? What if you're wasting their time? Maybe you have a voice like that sometimes when you want to share an idea or do something different or do something that's not expected of you. But the great news is since that time, I've also developed a massive human brain with a big frontal cortex like the rest of you. And so I can say, really, Todd? Am I going to die? Really? If I'm standing up here telling my ideas on stage, am I going to die? But the good thing about Todd is he loves lollipops. You have some lollipops on your tables. And so I say to Todd, and I did that today, I'm like, Todd, here's your lollipop. Go sit in the corner. He's right over there. And if a bunch of rowdy benefits professionals storm the stage with forks, come and help me. I think you can take them. But otherwise, I'm okay. And so maybe something like that works for you. It doesn't have to be Todd. Maybe it's some other abstract manifestation of your inner critic that says to you, what if they don't like it? What if it's dumb? What if you're wasting their time? Because it's outdated. It's from a time that isn't relevant anymore. I feel like sometimes we're all sitting in these little cardboard boxes. They're really comfortable and warm. And we sit there like, what is a vet supposed to look like? What does a benefits professional look like? What does a leader look like? And we sit there in these boxes just looking, waiting. Is someone going to move? It's like box sitting chicken. You know that game with the cars? It's like, who's going to move? Because if someone does something different, it gives everybody else the confidence to try something new. And it's those people that we remember and those people that move the dial. And sometimes we're like, they're a bit weird or they do something different. But it's the risk that they take to share their ideas and overcome this idea of not feeling like you're matter. So we've had this creativity in us. We still have it in us. It's kind of like breathing. How many of you know how to do that? This is where I decide how many of you want to clap. Or like, I don't know. I don't breathe. But we all know how to breathe. But we can breathe in different ways to help regulate our nervous system. So we can do like pranayama or that box breathing or that physiological sigh. And that helps to regulate our nervous system. This is just a trick. I put that in there. So I'm like, okay, now I'm probably nervous by now. I'm going to try to find a content way to put in this physiological sigh. But creativity is the same way. And what I'm going to share with you is 5 specific ways that I've learned from my deep dive into the research around creativity, but also my own experience and how you can help to bring that creativity that's already there. Because, the good news is you're already creative. The bad news is how am I supposed to teach you how to do something you already know how to do? So we're going to go through these 5 habits. They spell the word dance. That was my creative, okay, these are the words. How do I make a word out of it? AI was very helpful with that, by the way. AI is really great for brainstorming, that kind of thing. So the first letter in dance is D for daydream. Recently, I put in a proposal to speak at a conference, and I had 2. One was leading through ambiguity and change. The other one was in defense of daydreaming. Professional conference, which one do you think got picked? Not the daydreaming one. I'm still on a mission to get daydreaming back into the workforce. I don't know, it may be a wasted mission, but it feels wasteful, like La La Land, navel gazing, castle building, it sounds like such a waste of time, right? But it's not, and I'm going to use a metaphor to explain this. So imagine you have a problem you're trying to solve, and you have a friend. Your friend's a tiny billionaire. What do billionaires like to do? Spend money, make money, go to space. Did I miss that? What was that? Go to space. They like to go to space. So you give your idea to your tiny billionaire. They launch off into space, but you lose radio contact with this tiny billionaire. So they could be eating space burgers on some asteroid, for all you know, wasting your time. But what they're doing is they're flying around in their spaceship in the universe of your mind, trying to find answers, relationships, and experience, a trip you did. And then they come back to Earth and solve your problem. If you've ever been in the shower, driving a car, went for a walk, some of you, yeah? And something just, poof, where did that answer come from? It's your default mode network, which is active when you're daydreaming. Now, the cool thing about the default mode network, it was discovered by accident by a researcher who was comparing two controlled things. So like A and B, I don't even remember what it was, not important. But needed a control, right? So you're going to do task A, we'll see what happens in your brain, and then do task B, but in the middle, it's like a cracker between tasting things. So think about nothing. The researcher didn't even notice it. It was 5 or 6 years later that another researcher was looking at his work and said, wait, why is the brain doing all this stuff when you're thinking about nothing? There's parts of the brain that they didn't even know were connecting, and they were having these ideas. So that's what's happening when you're daydreaming. Your default mode network is engaged, and that is where you get these solutions and problems and these ideas. So if you're constantly on the phone, constantly listening to a podcast, always got your calendar scheduled to the nines, you don't give yourself time and room for your brain to simmer through those ideas, and it feels so unproductive. But doing nothing is sometimes doing everything. So making sure that you give your brain space and time to do nothing. There's this trend now. Is anybody doing this? They call it, I hope it's not offensive, raw dogging on the plane. Have you heard this? Some people, yeah? Where they just stare at the map. Have you seen someone do this? Yeah, and for a long flight? Have you done it?
Partially, yeah.
Yeah? So it's the same idea, like just allowing your brain to process and think. I mean, I'm not going to do that. That just seems like, when else am I going to watch a movie? But whatever works for you, and that is making sure you have time where you're not doing a task and doing nothing. Sometimes it's helpful to do a task like walking or driving or something like that, because the way your brain works is we have our executive function network, which is the thinking, analyzing part that most of us are really strong with. It's the part that doesn't work as well for me because I have ADHD, which makes a lot of people with ADHD very creative. We have less of a filter, blurt things out, stick our foot in our mouths, but we come up with ideas because we don't have a lot of that executive function. And then we have our imagination network, which is dreaming and thinking of all the ideas. And then there's a salience network in the middle, and that decides who's in charge. And if you're walking or driving a car, you need your executive function a little bit, but not too much. So it kind of keeps it busy, so it's not too busy saying, that's a dumb idea, don't think about that, that's not serious enough, And it allows your imagination network to dream. So daydreaming. The second letter in dance is A for ambiguity. Ambiguity is an ambiguous word. A lot of people are like, what does it even mean? Do you remember that dress that some people thought was green and some people thought was gold? So that's an ambiguous thing. So things are ambiguous. They don't care about us. It's something that we can perceive in one of a number of ways. That's something ambiguous. When we see something ambiguous, we feel uncertain. That emotion of like, I'm not sure what's going on here. Is this up or down, black or white? As an example, let's say you're a bunny rabbit hopping through the forest and you come across this fellow here. And you're a dumb little rabbit, you have a tiny brain. So you're like, is this a bear or a rabbit? Because it matters to you a lot. Because if it's a bear, it's going to eat you. If it's a rabbit, it's going to be your friend. So you're going to start collecting information and data. Like, does it sound like a rabbit? Does it sound like a bear eating rabbits? What does it look like? Does it look like bears? I keep thinking of Monty Python skit, like the rabbit with sharp, pointy teeth. What, behind the rabbit? No, it is the rabbit. You have to know Monty Python for that reference. I'll explain later. So do you see rabbits or bears? And then you're going to be pushed into making a decision. That decision is almost always what? If you're a rabbit, what are you going to do? You're going to run. You're going to run away from the bear, from the threat. Because it's worked for thousands or millions or however many generations there are of rabbits. And we're no different than the rabbit. When we see something uncertain and ambiguous that makes us uncertain, we do what's worked in the past. I don't know how that's working for you, but the way the world is changing, what we did yesterday might not even work tomorrow. It's another outdated, like with Todd, right? It's an outdated evolutionary adaptation because at that time, if we weren't sure if it was the red berry or the blueberry that was going to, be poisonous, we died. If a rustle in the trees ended up being a saber-toothed tiger and not the wind, we didn't pass our genes along. Certainty is something hardwired and programmed within us. So we tend to jump to status quo solutions. And what would that be maybe in the benefits world? Maybe this is what we've always done. This is what we should keep doing. Maybe it's like, this is what everybody else is doing. That's what we should do. This other solution, that's a bit new and weird, and I'm not sure how that's going to work out. Or maybe it's you personally, like, this is not the way that I show up at work because I show up this way in my box. How can I come up differently and say, I can change this narrative around what's been in the past and what can be in the future. So this is an ambiguous image. What do you see here? A planter? Yeah? Faces? Faces? A table? Yeah. So this is an ambiguous image because you either see like some kind of planter table structure or two faces. And you might see both. Some of you are like, I see both, Caroline. I know, this group. You're like, I win at ambiguity. You can't see both. You have to choose. So if you see both, it's because you're going fast. You're like faces, table, faces, table, faces, table. Table faces, I don't know. So we have to choose. And the funny thing about this is that by looking at this image, none of you have probably recognized it, but it creates a threat response. When we see something ambiguous, our brain goes, what? This is not good. And so we have, think of all the ambiguity in your life already. And then on top of that, we have this unconscious ambiguity that's also giving us little threat spikes throughout the day that interferes with our decision making. So let's try it. The problem is we don't have a lot of awareness about this. Yeah, good luck. You're like, someone's like, uh-oh, what's this mean? So I would invite you, if you're able to, please stand up. How are you feeling? Good? Some of you might be feeling a little uncertain. What's she going to make us do? Did you know that people would rather know and get an electric shock than wonder if they were going to get it at all? That's called foreshadowing. No, I'm just joking. So when I started researching about this, I started trying to think, like, how am I going to be able to pay more attention to this feeling of uncertainty? If it affects my decisions and it affects my mental health and it makes me unsure, like, how do I recognize it more? And so I noticed I started paying attention, and when I'm able to catch it when I'm on stage, or when I'm at the top of a double black ski run, or when I'm picking up the phone to call a pet owner with some difficult news, I notice that I have the same physical sensations. So mine might be different than yours. You're welcome to kind of close your eyes if you want and try to tap into what those feelings are. For me, I feel like I get a tightness in my lips, like I'm pursing my lips. I kind of feel a bit shaky in my hands. I also kind of feel like I want to bounce on the balls of my feet. And I probably don't catch it most of the time, but I feel like when I'm like, I'm feeling uncertain, that's when it's time to use my big frontal cortex and say to myself, I'm just feeling uncertain. I don't need to knee-jerk react. I don't need to react in this uncertainty because I'm just planning an open enrollment session. I'm not running from a bear, rabbit, rabbit thing, right? So hopefully that's helpful for you. Before we sit down, we're going to do another ambiguous exercise. No shocks, maybe a shock to your system. So what we're going to do is a staring contest. And there must be a winner, and I do have a prize for the competitive among you. I've got what's kind of falling apart? I've got a dark chocolate with wild blueberry chocolate bar. So what you're going to do in a second is turn to a partner, and you're going to have a staring contest. And the first person to look away or blank, like hopefully you all know how to do a staring contest, will sit down. And if you're still standing, you're going to find a new person because there is only one winner. There's no ambiguity in this exercise, in this ambiguity exercise. Are you ready? Okay, go. We're down to the competitive. Oh, there's two there. Look at the focus, the concentration. Woo! Oh, stand under a vent. Clever. Good point. Or under a really bright light, maybe. Distract your opponent. We've got some serious concentration going here. This is taking a lot longer than I thought it would. I guess I underestimated your will for, all right. Maybe my singing would help. We are the champions, not friends. It might take a while. Okay, let's try to mess them up. Yay! Let's give everybody a round of applause. Congratulations, David. Now you have to fight me. No, I'm just joking. No, I'm not doing a staring contest. Awesome. Thank you for participating. So some of you love that exercise a little too much. But I would say that most of us, when we're doing a staring contest like that, it takes focus, concentration, and mindfulness to stay in that moment. It feels a little uncomfortable, right? Staring in someone's eyes. And that's really what you do when you're facing ambiguity and uncertainty in the workplace or at home. It's using mindfulness to take a deep breath and say, no, I'm right here. It's just an open enrollment. I am not dying. Let me sit in this ambiguity and this discomfort and use mindfulness to stay there. Because in research around a dimension called tolerance of ambiguity, which is how comfortable we are in this uncertainty, which is highly predictive, by the way, against burnout and emotional intelligence and leadership. Creativity and mindfulness are the two factors that influence that the most. So by using your creativity and staying in that mindful space of knowing that it's uncomfortable when you don't know the answer will help open up all possibilities. And it'll make it a little more fun in the meantime. I think we could all use that a little bit. So we talked about daydreaming, ambiguity. The N is novelty. So novelty might be coming to a conference like this and meeting new people, sitting next to someone you've never met before, trying that latte that sounds a little bit weird, to be honest. Trying new things is going to populate that universe brain with new stars, planets, satellites. And if you have a massive universe brain, because you do lots of new things, travel to new places, either virtually or in real life, meet new people, hang out with people that don't agree with you, you're going to have a massive universe brain, and maybe you'll get that aha from daydreaming, and it'll link a concept from Icarus, the farthest known star, all the way to Earth. But if you do the same things all the time, hang out with the same people, do the same stuff, you might have some ideas and insights, but it might be a bit more like San Francisco to San Diego, right? So novelty is really about consciously putting yourself out there and trying new things and learning new materials, whether it's a skill, upskilling, whether it's a travel experience or meeting a new person. So the C in dance is for curiosity. Oh, we're going to do a little activity first. So what we're going to do is just very briefly, like 60 seconds total for each table. I'd like you to turn to the other people in your table, and I want you to share something they might not know. And that could be like something you do at a holiday. It could be a life hack. It could be a tool you use in your work that you think is the bee's knees. It could just be something simple. Like one of the things I learned is if you put an avocado that's ripe in water and then put it in the fridge, it lasts way longer, right? And I tried it, and it actually works. Crazy. So I'll give you 60 seconds to do that. Turn to the other people in your table and just quickly share one thing, one fact that you think they won't know. Ready, go. Hold it up. Quiet, quiet. Did everybody get a chance? Anybody have like an amazing idea that they think is going to change everybody's lives that they want to share? Anybody have anything really cool they found out in their group? No? Okay. Well, that's okay. You can continue the conversation after the conference. Okay, so we talked about daydream, ambiguity, novelty. The C in dance is for curiosity. When Sir Alexander Fleming left his lab to go party in Spain in a Speedo and get a tan, woo! He left his lab a mess. So he comes back after 2 weeks. He's nicely tanned, but his lab is a mess. He picks up those petri dishes that grow bacteria, and he starts throwing them in sterilization solutions like, paying for this vacation. We all have that, right? Open the email. It's not petri dishes. And then he stops and he gets curious because he notices on one of the petri dishes, there's a bunch of bacteria, but there's also some mold. But what's weird is that there's no bacteria next to the mold. Like, it's kind of like the bacteria can't grow next to mold. So it took decades and tons of money of investment to develop the life-changing drug we know of as penicillin. And I took some liberties with the story of Sir Alexander Fleming. And the moral of that story is that we should always lead with curiosity, and that men should always clean up after themselves. Sorry, men. Otherwise, we wouldn't have penicillin. So curiosity, and that looks like asking why. So asking your employees, why aren't you using that, I forget what you call it, the thing with the app, with the wellness apps, where you have like those micro things. Is there a word for that? I can't remember what it is. And there's like different apps people can use. Anyway, why aren't you using your benefits maybe? Well, they might say, because I forget about them. But then keep asking, but why do you forget about them? Channel that toddler that's like, why? And use your curiosity to actually get to the bottom of what it is. Because usually what people say is not the right answer. And always use your curiosity about how could things be different. Because if you want to create something new, it has to start with, how could things be different? How could they be changed? If you're not curious about that, you're never going to create anything new. So it's really important. So we're going to do another fun activity. This one, again, is going to be really quick. But I was going to make you do an improv exercise, and I thought it might be a little too much. This is still an improv exercise, and it's called Ask Only Questions. So you might see this if you ever go watch improv. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the theme of work-life balance, right, which is important to all of us and all of your organizations. And you're going to go around the table. You can do it multiple times if you're going fast, but you can only ask a question. So if I say something like, how do you fill your cup, John? You have to answer in a question. So that's why I went first. It's so much easier to go first. Why? That's a good one. Or what kind of things could I do? Or where do you think I should go? And it's a very awkward conversation because it's not a normal conversation. But the idea is, how do we lean into our curiosity and use those questions? And so we can start with the person with the shortest hair. You're welcome, shortest hair people. And then just keep going. If you mess up, it's okay. Just keep going. Ready? You got we'll do 2 minutes. How's it going?
Would you like to?
How's it going? Good? Bad? Is it hard? Hard. Yeah. Takes that frontal cortex.
He's really good at it.
Are you? What makes you good at it?
I really don't think I am.
No? Well, everybody else thinks you are, so I don't think it matters what you think.
There are like 3 things that I know.
Yeah.
Word on.
Oh, yeah? That's good. Well, it's hard because you just want to say, like, why or what. Like, how do you create a sentence that's a question? It's just something fun. Yeah, because you feel like you have to answer the question instead of asking a question. Yeah, that's exactly. It's totally wrong and normal, not normal conversation. So, hopefully, oh, good. You'll be the champion. Oh, see. Quiet coyote. My coyote's not quiet. It's kind of working. Okay. Thank you. Oh, does everybody else do it? That's how you know it's happening, because everybody else does it too. I got it. Thank you. Thank you for participating. I know it's hard and it's uncomfortable, and it's not something you want to do with your team or your employees. I need some time off. Why? Because I need some. Well, how do you know you need time off? Like that might not be the best conversation. But the idea is to just use our curiosity. So then the last letter in dance is E for editing later. And this takes a little bit of explanation. In a nutshell, Ernest Hemingway is quoted as saying, write drunk, edit sober. Who knew he was a budding neuroscientist? So you don't have to drink any alcohol. But the idea is that when you're thinking of new ideas and you're trying to brainstorm a new approach to your benefits program or restructuring something, it's important to separate your thinking, your divergent from your convergent thinking. So let's go through that a little bit because it needs some explanation. So divergent and convergent thinking are both part of creative problem solving and creative thinking. Divergent thinking is what kindergartners are really good at. Millions of answers, the sky's the limit. Convergent thinking is also an important part of creative thinking, but it takes usually a lot more focused attention. It usually is a bit more somber, and there's only one answer. So if I was writing a poem, a divergent question would be, what should I write my poem about? And a convergent question would be, which exact word fits in this sentence to make this poem amazing? So that's the difference between the two, and the problem is we tend to do them both at the same time. And what that looks like is, oh, I have a John suggested that last week, because John's always suggesting ideas. Or, I think they might think I'm weird if I say that. Or, I'm sure we don't have the budget for this. Or if you're a leader, the other way, people will say to you, I have an idea, and you're like, that's a bad idea, that'll never work. I don't have the time to think about or deal with this, right? So that's when we're trying to diverge and converge at the same time. So if you're trying to think of a new approach, you need to separate them. And so what that looks like is now we're diverging. There's no bad ideas, because there are bad ideas, of course. But if we go for the bad idea, sometimes it's easier for people to think of a bad idea than a good idea. And when we get them all out there, then my bad idea might give you a good idea. You're like, actually, that's a really bad idea, but my idea is actually quite good, and I never would have thought of it without your bad idea. And it can be difficult because people want to be right. They want to have the answers. But in divergent thinking, it's really important to just have the sky's the limit. So let's do some exercises to really feel the difference between the two. So we're going to do a divergent thinking exercise. It's called the Guildford's Test of Alternate Uses. And I always giggle when I read a creativity study. And I'm like, you're creativity researchers. Like, you really couldn't have thought of a more creative name for this creativity test than the Guildford's Test of Alternate Uses. So the idea is, if you were doing research about creativity and you wanted to know if wearing orange made you more creative, you would do this test and then score it, and then you would wear something orange and do the test, and they would compare the scores and say, were you more creative with wearing the orange or not? And we're not going to score it today, it's really just for fun, but we're going to do this exercise. So in a minute, I'm going to show you an item, you should know what it is, and your role is going to be to think of all the different things you can use it for. So if I gave you a brick, and you told me you could use it to build a house, you would be right, but it would not be a very high-scoring or very creative idea, because that's kind of what it's for, right? But if you told me you could use a brick as a scuba diving weight, or to, as a ballast for your boat, that would be a little bit more creative. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the item, and I'm just going to give you like 60 seconds in your group to just kind of brainstorm, and then we'll put some up on the screen. Does that sound okay? You ready? This is your item. I think you all know what this is. Hopefully you got some great ideas in your table, and we're gonna, thank you. This is like, what is this like on your forehead? This is like quiet coyote, like a coyote. Okay, hopefully you had some good ideas, and what I'd like you to do is add some of these ideas to the board so we can now learn from everybody. And maybe notice a little bit about if someone says something or you notice an idea, does that give you an idea? So we've got chip clip, place card holder, fidget toy, steal a car. Oh, that sounds good. Clip-on earring, so clipping, Star Wars fighter, prop something up, nose plug, ow. Curtains closed at the hotel. I love it, nose plug. Everybody wants to plug their nose. It's that low-hanging fruit, I guess. Money clip, blanket fort, love it. Chip clip, cord organizer, earrings, clothespin. So yeah, so as we see, hold up pants, work badge holders, a purse for a doll. Yeah, pick a lock. Torture device. Okay, so I'm going to challenge you. Stop your spouse talking. Or your employees. No, I don't want to hear about your HSA account. Alter clothes, take apart and pick your teeth. So that's an interesting thing. So kindergartners, they figure they got as many, they'll ask for more. They're like, what if I have 1 million binder clips, right? Cinch large blouse. I love these. These are all great. Decoration. How many of you honestly are thinking of a weapon? And you didn't want to put it down because you're like, oh, people are going to think I'm a serial killer if I put down something, a weapon, or something not safe for work, because that's what our mind does, right? And that's what ventriloquism. Who put that one on? Who did ventriloquism? Where? Yeah, there you go. All of you did? Or you? Well, you get one. You can split it. So it's important to go for those bad ideas, and within obviously a framework of what's acceptable. But having those space to say those silly things and those weird ideas, like stealing a car, can help give you those other ideas that can help change everything. Thank you for participating. You were great sports. Okay, so that's divergent thinking. That's many answers. The sky's the limit. Now we're going to do convergent. So this is called the remote word associates test. Boring, right? What a boring name. So in this one, I'm going to give you 3 words. This is a test, like a practice. So in these 3 words, hound, pressure, and shot, there's one word that ties them all together. What would that be? Blood, right? So we've got blood, hound, blood pressure, blood shot. I'm really bad at explaining things, so I just show you. It's easier. So we're going to do another one, but I would please ask you not to say the answer. If you get the answer right away, give everybody else kind of a chance to figure it out. And notice what's happening. Are you going through a list of words? And like, how is it coming to you, or is it maybe just popping into your head? So I'd invite you to take a look. If you get it right, just look around the room, because you will see when other people solve the problem, because they'll go, no. But they're excited. People are like, oh, I got it. It's that dopamine hit we get from solving the problem. Okay, you ready? So it's flower, scout, and friend. So please hold it to yourself if you get the answer. I like this lady over here. It's like, ooh. Oh, you didn't? Oh, I thought you had the answer. Oh, it's okay. You can get excited. It's all good. Okay, give a few more seconds. Does anybody have the answer? What's the answer?
I think it's girl.
Are you? Do you think, or you know?
I'm 100% girl.
Yeah, there you go. This is one of those, this is actually an epiphany, an insight. So the answer is girl. There you go. Here. Heads up. Sorry, I don't play ball. So remember we talked about the shortcuts and heuristics and assumptions that we make about the way the world works, and we don't really know we're doing them to find that certainty? How many of you went girl flower, girl scout, girlfriend? Not girl. Because the last question, bloodhound, blood pressure, blood shot. So you're like, oh, this is how this game works. You didn't even realize that. So it can limit, and that's what limits our creativity, is this curse of knowledge. I know how this game works. No, you don't. So being aware of that and knowing this is subconsciously limiting your ability to see new solutions is really important. Ask a kindergartner, they'll get it. Okay, let's do a couple more. I think there's one more. Okay, hot, catcher, and food. Please keep the answer to yourself just for 10, 15 seconds. I see some nods. Okay, does anybody know the answer? Yeah, over here? In the back? What? Dog. How sure are you? There you go. Hot dog, dog catcher, dog food. There you go. So these are convergent exercises because there's only one answer, but this actually is a bit of a trick because it does recruit that default mode network, because what most people do is they're like, oh, is it like cat food, cat dog, no, whatever, hot cat, doesn't make a lot of sense. And then what happens is you get tired of thinking about it, so you send it over to your default mode, give it to the tiny billionaire. Because how many of you the answer just poof, popped? How did you get the answer? It just came to you. It's an insight. And you know, if we had you hooked up to wires, that I could have told you were going to have the answer like a few milliseconds before you even knew you were going to have it, because our brain waves change when we're going to have an insight. So pretty cool. Yes, I'm a nerd. So what we need to do with this divergent and convergent thinking is we need to separate them. So Dr. George Land with the kindergartners calls it the gas and the brake. So divergent thinking is a full tank of gas, can take you on a road trip to wherever you want. Convergent thinking is also very important. It's the brake, so you don't hit someone in the crosswalk and then have to fill in a form and send in a benefits claim and all that stuff, right? Or the other benefits people that do like the insurance stuff, I don't know. But you know what happens when you hit the gas and the brake at the same time? Okay, let me take you back in my time machine to 1986. I'm a teenager, and I work at Kmart, and I have a crush on a guy I work with. He's a stock boy. And he loves cars, and for some weird long reason, I drive a Camaro. Z28, thank you very much, because I'm Canadian. Electric blue, and I say to him, do you want to drive my car after work? And he's like, do I? So we go out to the empty parking lot, I hand him the keys, he sits in the car, and he's like, gives me the movie star smile. I'm like, oh, I'm on cloud 9. And then he slams the gas all the way to the floor and the brake all the way to the floor at the same time and yells, "Brake stand! Burnout is what you call it, I think." I didn't know what was happening. Like, the sound of squealing tires was deafening. The smell of burning rubber filled my nose, and I looked out of the window, and there was smoke everywhere, and I realized we were going nowhere. There was all this drama, all this commotion, all this noise, but we were stuck in one place. And that is exactly what happens when you try to diverge and converge at the same time. You have to separate them, allow your divergent, looking for the bad ideas, what's possible, because you do want to edit those ideas and figure out how you're going to implement them and which one's feasible, but you shouldn't do them at the same time because you'll be stuck like me and you'll be going nowhere. Maybe you'll get grounded like I did. So that's divergent and convergent thinking. Hopefully you've learned a few tips and tricks today to help catalyze your creativity. I have a QR code here. If you would like to give me some feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like, it's really helpful for me. It also asks you, I think, if you want to be part of like a 6-week creativity challenge where you get an email every week that gives you like a 2-minute thing to amplify your creativity so that you can practice these habits we talked about today. Does anybody have anything that they urgently want to share about creativity? We can do it later too. I'm supposed to be like talking so you have time to do this QR code, but I'm really impatient, so we're just going to move on. If you don't get it, I can always email it to you. So those are the 5 letters in dance: daydream, ambiguity, novelty, curiosity, and edit later. But how are we going to remember them, right? That's like 5 things. That's a lot for my perimenopausal brain, ADHD brain. So what I'd like to do is we're going to just kind of make it into our bodies a little bit. So I'm going to invite you to make the letters with your, and if you don't want to be a big, expansive person, you can just make a little D with your fingers, but we're going to make these letters with our bodies somehow so that we can try to remember them. So you're welcome to stand up if you like, and we'll do like a little D, or you could do it, wait, am I doing it for you or for me? So that's everybody's D like. Why don't you stand up? Come on, I know you can stand up because you did it already. So let's make a D. There we go. All right. Edit later. Bad ideas. Okay, what about an A? A? Yeah, this one's a little bit easier. Or a small A? I don't know. How about N? Is that N? Is that, I don't even know if that's an N. N? Okay, C. Come on, C is super easy. And then how about E? Like this way? No, that's for me. This is for you. E. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, I need 5 volunteers. 5 volunteers. Oh, these all got wet. Oh, well. Who wants a soggy? If you don't volunteer, okay, there. You can, John. We got here, Roxanne. You gotta put on a red light. And there's C. Sorry, it's wet. I don't know why it's wet. And then one more. Yes, thank you, Stacy. Okay, so we're gonna do a wave. So D's are over here. If you're not sure if you're a D or an A, just lean into the ambiguity and pick one. And then A's, N's, C's, and E's. Maybe D. There. A. Yes. N. There's not enough N's. Come on. Come on, N's. Okay. N. No, you make letters. Sorry, I'm not clear. Where's your N? N. Okay. Picking on the N's. C. There you go. And then E's. Woo! Okay, let's do it a bit faster. Okay. D. A. N. C. E. Woo! You know what? We need something else. Ready? D-A-N-C-E. D-A-N-C-E. And then you can dance, because that's creative too. Woo! Okay. D-A-N-C-E. D-A-N-C-E. Woo! Let's give our volunteers and everybody a round of applause. That's creativity. Look, no one's going to force you to stand up on that stage and share your creative contribution with the world. Hopefully it's not a ventriloquism routine with a Cabbage Patch doll. But what is your creative contribution? What is it that you can bring to work? Whether it's something a little bit personal about yourself that you can use to share and create a connection with somebody else. Maybe it's a hobby that you do that you want to tell people about, or a hobby that you used to do that you just stopped doing. Maybe you can start that again and make you feel a little bit better. Because doing nothing is also a decision. You could do nothing. And with the way the world is changing so rapidly, we worry so much about failure and time and rejection and criticism and perfectionism that we do nothing. But that's certainly going to result in the thing that we're most afraid of, which is failure. So on the way out, I would please be very grateful for you to take that smiley face and own your creativity on that banner out there, because it sounds woo, it sounds a little like, oh, out there. But by doing that, you're telling yourself, I have the capacity to solve problems, I have the capacity to think divergently, and then edit and figure out the feasible ideas later. Look, let's be real. So for real, dead ass. As the kids say. Gen Alpha slang is extremely creative. It's fire, bet. Right? It's not going to solve your budgetary challenges and the needs of your employees and your complicated regulatory environment and legislation that's impacting your benefits program. But if you bring a creative mindset to your work, you might solve some more problems. You might feel a bit more engaged, and maybe with a little bit less stress. It might look like coming to a strategic planning meeting with maybe a little spring in your step because you're bringing hope. Hope that you might have some answers to help solve some problems. It might mean a brainstorming session that includes everybody in your team, even the introverts. And in the problem-solving session in the workshops, we're going to talk about some strategies to do that. And it might mean leaning into that ambiguity with a little bit more confidence and calm so that when you get home, you can be fully present for your family and not thinking about the day. Like, you have the capacity, creativity is in you. It's really not that complicated. Just dance. Hopefully, thank you so much.